Chapter 1. The Call. The floor-to-ceiling windows of the Quantum Innovations Executive Tower offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, but Simon Carlyle hardly noticed. The glow of midnight bled into his office like a haunting specter, painting the minimalist decor in muted blues and silvers. A spreadsheet flickered across his massive monitor. The room was silent, save for the hum of the HVAC and the occasional click of his silver Mont Blanc pen. Simon leaned back in his leather chair, rubbing the bridge of his nose, exhaustion etched deep into the lines of his face. His bespoke navy suit was creased at the elbows, and his tie hung slightly askew. The meeting had run 4 hours longer than intended, but for Simon, time was currency, and every second wasted was a fortune lost. Across the conference table sat 3 of his department heads, all bleary-eyed, desperately trying to stay focused. Simon, despite the fatigue, remained razor-sharp. Project Sentinel's delay can't stretch into Q4, he said, voice cold but controlled. We've already lost ground to Exotech in Asia. One more slip-up, and they'll steamroll us. The youngest executive, Jenna from product development, cleared her throat nervously. We're working with a new AI compiler from the Zurich lab. It'll shave deployment by 6 weeks. Simon's phone buzzed sharply, cutting through her sentence. He instinctively reached for it, barely glancing before noticing the caller ID. Riverside General Hospital. He frowned. His chest tightened. He answered immediately. This is Simon Carlyle. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm. Mr. Carlyle, this is Dr. Marcus Levins at Riverside General. We have your son, Nathan, in the emergency room. He's in critical condition. We need you to come in immediately. Simon went cold. It was as if all the oxygen had been sucked from the room. My what? He stammered, his voice cracking for the first time in years. Your son, Nathan. He was brought in by ambulance about 20 minutes ago. Blunt force trauma, internal bleeding, suspected broken bones. He's conscious, but barely. You need to get here right away. Simon didn't say a word. He simply hung up. The room went silent. His department heads looked at him, puzzled. Sir, Jenna asked softly, but Simon was already out of his chair. He grabbed his coat, not bothering to button it, and stormed toward the elevator. Cancel everything, he barked over his shoulder. Tell Frank to put the board meeting on ice. I don't care if the SEC is listening. Jenna stood. Is something wrong with Nathan? Simon didn't respond. The elevator doors closed. The ride down felt like it took hours. His mind was a whirlpool of panic and disbelief. Nathan, his boy, his only child. Simon's relationship with Nathan hadn't been easy. Running a billion-dollar tech empire left little time for baseball games or parent-teacher nights. Still, Nathan was his blood. The last thing he had from a marriage he had once fought to save. Lana. Simon blinked, suddenly remembering he had missed several calls from earlier. He pulled his phone out. 6 missed calls. All from Lana. No voicemails. No texts. Just silence. His gut twisted. As soon as the elevator hit the lobby, Simon made a beeline for the parking garage, ignoring the security guard calling his name. His Aston Martin roared to life, tires screeching as he sped into the night. The city lights blurred past as he weaved between cars on the freeway, breaking speed limits without a second thought. Rain began to patter against the windshield. Simon's hands gripped the steering wheel like a vice. What the hell happened, Nathan? He muttered, eyes burning. He pressed a button on his car's dashboard. Call Lana. The phone rang once. Twice. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Still nothing. His jaw clenched. Where the hell are you, Lana? They weren't divorced. Not officially. The spark had long faded, though. Lana had grown distant. Distracted. Always hosting wine nights or going on spa retreats. Simon had buried himself in work, trying not to see the cracks widening in their life together. But now, his son was in critical condition, and his wife, the boy's mother, was unreachable. Simon slammed his fist against the steering wheel. Riverside General was bathed in harsh white light. Emergency sirens echoed faintly as Simon skidded into the ER driveway and double-parked without care. He was through the sliding glass doors before the valet could even approach. At the triage desk, a nurse looked up startled. "I'm Simon Carlisle. My son, Nathan, he was just brought in. Where is he?" Simon's voice was controlled, but the rage and fear shimmered just below the surface. The nurse checked her tablet. "Yes, Mr. Carlisle. Room 3B. Down the corridor and to the left. Dr. Levins is waiting for you." Simon didn't thank her. He sprinted. Every step down that sterile hallway felt like a descent into something deeper and darker. His mind reeled with questions. An accident? A fight? Drugs? No, not Nathan. That boy had a kind heart. A good soul. The curtain to room 3B was half drawn. He pulled it back. What he saw knocked the breath from his lungs. Nathan lay there, pale and bruised, hooked to machines that beeped in rhythm with his fragile heartbeat. His right arm was wrapped in a thick cast. There was blood caked on his hairline. His eyes fluttered open weakly as Simon approached. "Dad," Nathan whispered. Simon swallowed hard, his throat thick. "I'm here, buddy. I'm right here." Nathan's lips trembled. "It hurts." Simon brushed his son's hair gently. "You're going to be okay. I promise you. I've got you." Dr. Levins appeared beside them. "He's stable for now, but he took a serious blow to the ribs. A cracked ulna, possible concussion. We're running more scans to check for internal damage." Simon nodded numbly. "What happened?" Dr. Levins hesitated. "We haven't gotten the full story. He was brought in by a neighbor who found him on your front lawn." Simon blinked. "My front lawn?" Dr. Levins stepped aside. He was trying to call someone when he collapsed. Simon turned back to Nathan. The boy's eyes shimmered with tears. I saw them, Dad," he murmured. "Saw who?" Nathan swallowed. "Mom and Steve. I caught them in your bedroom. Together." Simon froze. "And when I tried to call you," Nathan's voice cracked. "He came after me. He broke my arm, Dad. And Mom, she helped him." Simon's world tilted. He gripped the edge of the hospital bed, his knuckles white. Then, without a word, he stood and walked out. His phone began to ring again. "Lana." He didn't answer. His blood was boiling. His heart was thundering. And all he could hear were Nathan's last words echoing in his skull. "He broke my arm, Dad. And Mom, she helped him." Chapter 2. The Confession. The antiseptic scent of the hospital room clung to Simon's clothes like smoke after a fire. The constant beep of Nathan's heart monitor was both a comfort and a curse. Proof of life, but a constant reminder of how close he'd come to losing his son. Simon sat stiffly in the chair beside Nathan's bed, elbows on his knees, fingers laced so tightly his knuckles ached. Nathan lay still beneath thin white sheets, his casted arm resting on a foam cushion, a bandage above his right eyebrow, and a dull purple bruise swelling along his jaw. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Nathan should have been in his room right now, probably gaming or texting friends, not lying in a hospital bed like some victim in a crime scene. Nathan stirred. Simon stood up instantly, looming over the bed. "Nathan," he whispered, voice shaky. "You awake?" The boy's eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened. "Dad, I'm here." Simon's hand trembled as he placed it lightly on Nathan's good shoulder. "I'm here, son. You're okay now." Nathan blinked, his vision still adjusting. His voice came out in a raspy croak. Where am I?" "You're at Riverside General," Simon said gently. "You were hurt, Nathan, but you're safe. You're stable. They've got you on fluids and pain meds. Just rest, okay?" Nathan's brows furrowed as memories returned. It had happened so fast. Simon pulled the chair closer and sat again, this time leaning in. "What happened, buddy? I need to know." Nathan's face twisted in pain, not from his injuries, but from what he was about to say. His voice was small, almost a whisper. "I wasn't supposed to be home. I came back early from Liam's house because I forgot my laptop." Simon nodded slowly, careful not to interrupt. "I walked into the house. It was too quiet," Nathan continued. "I thought maybe Mom had gone out again. But then I heard noises from upstairs." Simon felt his throat tighten. Nathan turned his head slightly toward him. "I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe the TV was on, but it wasn't." He blinked, and a tear rolled down the side of his face. "I went upstairs to your room." A beat passed. Simon's jaw clenched. Nathan's voice cracked. I saw Mom with Steve. Simon stared at him, stunned. Steve Jenkins? For next door? Nathan nodded, barely able to meet his father's eyes. They were on your bed, Dad. Simon's breath hitched. He had known things were off with Lana for months, maybe even years. But this? With Steve Jenkins, the jackass neighbor who bragged about his backyard renovations and borrowed Simon's tools without returning them? The man who toasted Simon and Lana's anniversary with them just last year? Simon closed his eyes for a moment, tried to keep himself from shaking. I didn't know what to do, Nathan said, voice shaking. I backed out. I didn't think they saw me. I went downstairs, pulled out my phone. I was going to call you. Simon opened his eyes again. Then what? Nathan swallowed. That's when I heard footsteps. I turned around, and it was Steve. He looked pissed. He knew I saw them. Simon's hands were balled into fists in his lap. He started yelling at me. Nathan went on. Said I had no right to spy. That I was trying to ruin things. I tried to run, but he grabbed me by the collar and threw me into the wall. Simon stood abruptly, pacing the small room. That bastard laid hands on you. Nathan nodded, wincing at the memory. He kept yelling. Said I needed to keep my mouth shut. When I reached for my phone again, he knocked it out of my hand. Then he twisted my arm. I heard it crack. Simon's stomach turned. His heart thudded with rage. I screamed. Nathan said, his voice thinner now. I begged him to stop. Simon stopped pacing. And where was your mother during all this? Nathan hesitated. Nathan. Simon's voice was low. Firm. Where was Lana? Nathan finally looked at him. The betrayal on the boy's face was unmistakable. She was right there. She saw everything. Simon stared, as if the words couldn't process. I called out to her, Nathan said, tears streaming now. She didn't help me. She told me to calm down. She said I was overreacting, that I was trying to make them look bad. Simon took a step back. His mouth parted slightly, but no words came. She told Steve to get me out of the house before I did something stupid, Nathan said bitterly. They dragged me outside and left me on the lawn. I couldn't even stand. My phone was still inside. Simon turned away, running a hand through his hair, his mind racing. His wife, the woman he had built a life with. She had stood there, watching her son get assaulted, and had done nothing. Worse than nothing, she had helped. He felt sick. I just laid there, Nathan said behind him, hoping someone would see me. That you come home. Simon didn't answer. He stared out the window into the hospital parking lot, dark and motionless. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, haunted, cold, unrecognizable. We turned back to Nathan. His face was stone. You did the right thing, son, he said quietly. Nathan tried to nod, but the movement made him wince. Simon sat back down beside him, this time holding his hand. I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have seen this coming. You didn't know, Nathan whispered. But I should have, Simon muttered. I knew something was wrong. I let it slide because I was too busy, too distracted. That's on me. Nathan squeezed his father's hand, despite the pain. Don't blame yourself. Simon didn't respond. His eyes were on the floor. His mind, however, was back at the house. With them, the lies, the betrayal, the image of Lana, cool, calculating, watching her own son suffer. He slowly stood up. I'll take care of everything, Nathan. You just rest. Nathan gave a weak nod. Okay. Simon leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to his son's forehead. You're safe now. Then he stepped out into the hallway, alone. Behind him, Nathan drifted into a drugged sleep. Simon's phone buzzed again. Lana. He stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. Chapter 3. The House of Lies. The drive back home was silent. Nathan sat slumped in the passenger's seat, cradling his casted arm, his face pale and pensive under the dim glow of the dashboard lights. Simon gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled fury. Every red light felt like a test of his restraint. The image of his wife helping that bastard assault their son played on repeat in his mind like a broken film reel. Over and over, louder and louder. When they pulled into the driveway, the lights inside the house were on. Too many lights. Simon's chest tightened. The front door wasn't even fully closed. It hung ajar like an afterthought. He reached across Nathan and opened the glove compartment, pulling out a small .38 revolver he hadn't touched in years. Nathan blinked at it. Dad, I won't use it unless I have to, Simon said flatly, slipping the weapon into the back of his waistband. Stay behind me. You're not getting hurt again. Nathan nodded, his body tense, but he didn't protest. Simon pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house smelled of perfume and panic. He heard movement upstairs, rushed footsteps, the sound of zippers and hangers clattering, luggage wheels thumping against hardwood. He motioned for Nathan to stay at the bottom of the stairs and ascended slowly, one deliberate step at a time. And then he saw them. Lana was in the walk-in closet, yanking clothes off hangers with mechanical precision, throwing dresses and jewelry into an open suitcase on the bed. Steve, still shirtless, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, was stuffing hard drives and papers into a backpack. His face turned a shade paler when he saw Simon standing in the doorway. Well, Simon said, voice low and gravelly. Looks like the rats are scurrying before the storm. Lana froze. Simon, I didn't think you'd be back so soon. Yeah, he growled. Funny how quickly plans unravel when you forget your son has friends and a father who gives a damn. Steve stepped forward, his tone falsely confident. Look, man, this doesn't have to be. Simon moved before the sentence finished. His fist connected with Steve's jaw in a savage blow that sent the man sprawling across the room. Steve crashed into the dresser, scattering perfume bottles and picture frames. He groaned, dazed, tried to get up. Simon didn't let him. He pounced, grabbing Steve by the collar and slamming him into the wall. You laid hands on my son, he snarled. In my house, in my room, and you thought you could just pack up and run. Simon, stop. Lana screamed, rushing forward. You're hurting him. Good. Simon drove a knee into Steve's gut, forcing the air out of him with a loud gasp. Steve coughed, blood dribbling from his lip. Saw too much, we didn't mean. Simon slammed him again. Didn't mean to break his arm? You sick bastard. He drew back his fist for another punch, knuckles already slick with blood, but Nathan's voice echoed from downstairs. Dad, don't kill him. That stopped him. Simon stood there for a moment, his breath ragged, heart thundering. Then, with a final shove, he let Steve collapse to the floor like a heap of trash. Lana rushed to Steve's side, helping him sit up. You're insane, Simon. You've ruined everything. Simon wiped blood off his hand with a nearby towel and glared down at her. No, you ruined everything the second you decided to destroy your son's life for a quick thrill with this bastard. You don't understand, Lana hissed, eyes wild. This wasn't just about you and me. It was save it, Simon snapped. There's nothing you can say that doesn't make you look worse than you already do. Steve groaned, his head lolling to the side as Lana tried to help him stand. And that's when Simon heard it. Barely audible, muttered between Steve's labored breaths and Lana's frantic whispers, came the words. Did you grab the documents from his study? We can't move to phase 2 without them. Simon's blood ran cold. Lana hissed back. I thought you had them. You said they were in the safe. They were. Steve snapped. Unless your idiot son took them. Simon stepped closer, voice quiet but deadly. What documents? They both froze. Lana looked up at him slowly, her expression now void of fear. Instead, there was something colder, calculating. You were never supposed to find out, she said, lips curling. Not yet. Simon's eyes narrowed. What the hell is phase 2? Steve's answer came in a mumble, like he realized too late that he'd already said too much. Simon's gaze darted to the half-packed bags, the folders and drives scattered in a heap. Something far worse than infidelity was playing out here. And it had nothing to do with broken vows and everything to do with sabotage. You're not just cheaters, he said quietly. You're traitors. Lana stood, dusting herself off like none of this had happened. You don't own the world, Simon. You think because you build a company, you get to control people. We were just trying to take what we deserved. Simon stepped back, disgusted. You used our son as a shield while you set fire to everything. My house, my trust, my company. Steve wiped blood from his mouth. You have no idea what's coming. Simon looked at them both, then turned and walked away, leaving them stunned in the chaos they created. Chapter 4. Legal War Room. Simon sat in the corner booth of an upscale cigar lounge in the city, one that prided itself on privacy and discretion. The low hum of jazz played through hidden speakers, mixing with the quiet clinking of whiskey glasses and murmured conversations. His untouched drink sat sweating on a coaster, ignored. Across from him, Frank Delaney leaned back in the booth, a legal pad resting on his crossed leg, his trademark horn-rimmed glasses halfway down his nose. "You're telling me," Frank said slowly, "that your wife and Steve Jenkins, your goddamn neighbor, were not only having an affair but tried to assault your son, rob you blind, and possibly sabotage Quantum from the inside out?" Simon's voice was calm, but it vibrated with fury. "They called it Phase 2. They were packing documents, hard drives, like they were prepping for a hostile takeover or a heist. Lana's been transferring money from our joint accounts for months, and my son said she stood there while Steve attacked him." Frank let out a long, low whistle. "Jesus. I knew she was ice cold, but this is tactical." "She didn't flinch," Simon muttered. "Not even when she saw Nathan broken. She looked more annoyed than afraid." Frank scribbled something. "All right. First things first, we lock down your assets. All of them. I'll get a temporary freeze on anything jointly held, and we'll move fast on restructuring Quantum's executive authority, just in case there's already a legal backdoor open somewhere." Simon nodded. "I want every account, every access point reviewed. She's not just cheating, Frank. She's orchestrating." Frank tapped his pen on the pad, then looked up. "I'm going to loop in Ruby Winters." Simon arched a brow. "The PI. The best one I know," Frank said. "XNSA. She's already been discreetly handling asset tracing for some of my Messier divorce clients. If Lana's been moving money or leaving trails, Ruby will find it. You'll want eyes on everything: your house, your office, your phone, your computer. You're being watched, Simon. Count on it." Simon stared into the glass of untouched scotch in front of him. "Then it's time I started watching back." Later that day, Ruby Winters arrived at Simon's office after dark, dressed in all black with a laptop bag slung across her shoulder. She didn't look like a spy, but she moved like one, quiet, calculated, and always aware of exits. "Mr. Carlyle," she said, extending a gloved hand. "I hear you've got a rat problem." Simon smirked. "More like an infestation." "Perfect," Ruby replied. "Those are the most fun." Frank stood by the office bar, pouring coffee instead of whiskey. "I gave her everything you sent over. Bank records, communications logs, even your smart home permissions." Ruby dropped into the leather chair across from Simon and opened her laptop. "First, your house is bugged. I'd bet my retainer on it." "I figured," Simon muttered. "I felt eyes on me for weeks." "Your smart home cameras?" Ruby continued, typing rapidly. "Link to an app Lana installed last October. She had remote access to every room, baby monitor style. Also, she installed the ghosting software on your desktop. Let me guess, you started losing random files about 2 months ago." Simon blinked. "Yeah, I thought it was a glitch." Ruby turned the screen so he could see. It wasn't. She was syncing your drives to a cloud account registered under a fake LLC out of Delaware. "She's been watching everything." Simon leaned forward. "What else?" Ruby opened another window, digital banking logs. "She's been moving money to 5 different accounts using microtransfers, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, just under the radar for bank flags. Combined, she's already siphoned around $870,000. Simon's breath hitched. "From where?" "Mostly personal accounts, but she dipped into Quantum's R&D fund last week through an expense shell company," Ruby replied. "Something called Blue Ivory Consulting. Recognize it?" Simon nodded slowly. "That's the vendor we were about to vet for our new AI initiative." "Not anymore. It's fake." Ruby closed the laptop. "She's building a war chest, probably to leverage against you." Simon looked to Frank. "What about Steve?" Ruby answered instead. "Steve Jenkins is dirty. Real dirty. His name came up in an FBI data dump last year. Minor connections to a low-level syndicate out of Jersey, mostly tech fraud, shell companies, laundering crypto. Nothing solid enough to convict, but he's on the watch list." Simon sat back, mind reeling. So, they weren't just having an affair. They were partnered. This was always about more than sex. Ruby nodded. I doubt they're the top of the food chain either. This feels orchestrated, planned with external help. Someone else is pulling strings. Frank stepped forward. We need to act before they do. If she's trying to destabilize Quantum from the inside, we have to cut the cancer out now. Simon stared at the ceiling, jaw clenched. How long, Ruby? How long has she been planning this? Ruby didn't flinch. At least 6 months. Maybe longer, my guess. It started the day she had you sign that updated marital trust after your last expansion deal. Simon closed his eyes. He remembered the day. He was distracted, half listening, juggling meetings. She set the board, and I walked right into it, he whispered. Frank pulled a fresh legal pad from his briefcase. So what's next? Simon opened his eyes, gaze sharp now. We go to war. Quietly. Strategically. No screaming matches. No threats. We watch, listen, and let them think they've won. Ruby grinned. I like the way you think. Frank raised his coffee. Then let's draw up a plan. Because if they started this game, it's time they find out who really runs it. Simon stood, looking out the window at the city skyline. She brought this into my house. Hurt my son. Betrayed everything. I'll burn down the world before I let her walk away with a penny or a secret. Silence fell in the room. It wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence that comes right before the storm. Chapter 5. The Trap. The evening sky over the Carlisle estate was bruised purple, the sun retreating behind clouds like it, too, didn't want to witness what was about to unfold. Simon sat in his private study, his sleeves rolled up, the fire crackling behind him. The room was quiet, save for the rhythmic tapping of a pen against his desk and the hum of his encrypted laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard before he finally hit send. A fabricated email burst into cyberspace, confidential, urgent, and entirely fake. It detailed a high-stakes acquisition. Quantum Innovations' supposed bid to purchase a tech competitor for $1.3 billion. The bait was designed to be irresistible, especially for someone as desperate and greedy as Lana. He didn't even have to guess whether she'd take it. Operation Honey Trap initiated, he muttered under his breath. A knock broke the silence. Ruby Winters stepped into the study wearing her usual black ensemble, a tablet tucked under one arm and a smirk on her face. Guess who couldn't keep her sticky fingers off the silverware? She said. Simon looked up. You got something? Ruby handed him the tablet. Pulled the security camera backups from your garage and the hallway leading to your office. Watch this. Simon pressed play. The footage showed Lana, dressed casually but with purpose, moving through the hallway like a ghost. She glanced over her shoulder, punched in the office code, and slipped inside. A moment later, she emerged with a large envelope and something tucked under her coat. I time-stamped this. 3 nights ago, Ruby said, you were in Chicago for the Investor Summit. She waited until the whole house staff was on night shift rotation. Clever, but not clever enough. Simon's jaw clenched. That's the emergency dossier I kept in my safe. The one with our private shareholder agreements, the patent lock files, everything. She took it, Ruby confirmed. And by the looks of it, she's already passed some of it to Steve. I traced a secure digital transfer from her burner laptop to an encrypted drive in Steve's name. Simon exhaled slowly, the fury simmering beneath his ribs. She's making moves faster than we thought. Desperation makes people reckless, Ruby said. That's where we trapped them. Simon nodded. The email went out 5 minutes ago. The acquisition story should trickle down to the internal chatter system any minute now. They'll think it's real. They'll go after it, Ruby said. You're dangling a billion-dollar carrot, Simon. She won't resist. Simon stood and crossed the room to the wet bar, pouring himself a glass of water. And when she bites, I'll be watching, Ruby replied. Every keystroke, every message, every door she opens in that house, we're logging it. Simon turned to face her. I want her to think she's winning. I want her to feel like she's finally outsmarted me. Ruby tilted her head. And when she believes it, his eyes narrowed. Then I take everything back. 2 days later, Simon sat at the kitchen counter, sipping coffee, when Lana entered the room. Her movements were relaxed, practiced. She was dressed in soft beige cashmere and held her phone loosely in her hand like she didn't have a care in the world. She smiled at him. You're up early. Again. Big week, Simon said, sipping. We're finalizing some new acquisition deals. Big money on the line. Lana perked up, masking the spark in her eyes with a lazy blink. Oh, something exciting. Very, he said coolly. Confidential, of course. Lana nodded, but her body stiffened just slightly. Simon noticed. She turned toward the fridge and said casually, "You know, you've been working so hard lately. Maybe we should take a break. Get away for a while." Simon forced a smile. Maybe once this deal is closed. As Lana left the room, Ruby's voice came through his earpiece. She's already forwarded the fake merger file to Steve's email. She used a VPN, but bounced through one of her usual tunnel proxies. About her dead to rights. Simon's heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. What's Steve doing? Printing the documents, Ruby said. Looks like he's prepping for something. They've also scheduled a meeting tomorrow night at the lake house. Simon stood, setting down his mug. Then we follow them. Later that night, Ruby's surveillance van screens flickered with activity inside the cramped surveillance vehicle parked a block from Steve's house. Ruby sat at the center console, fingers flying across her keyboard, while Simon stood behind her, arms crossed. There, she said. Thermal scan confirms both Lana and Steve are in the office. They're talking, probably planning their next move. Simon leaned forward, jaw tight. Can you pick up audio? Ruby flicked a switch, and the room filled with grainy but audible voices. Deal goes through. We're sitting on gold, Steve's voice said. Lana replied. Simon's distracted. He hasn't suspected a thing. I already got the key codes. We'll hit the safe again and grab the rest of the files before he even notices. You sure he's not onto us? Steve asked. Lana's voice was sharp. If he was, we'd know. He's been quiet lately. Probably stressed about the board vote. We move fast. We're gone before he gets a clue. Ruby muted the feed. That's our confirmation, she said. Simon's expression darkened. They think I'm a fool. They always do, Ruby said, until the noose tightens. Back at the estate, Simon closed the door behind him, the lock clicking into place. He picked up a voice recorder and began dictating. Day 12. Lana and Steve have taken a bait. Phase 1 of counter-extraction complete. Ruby has full access to their digital footprint. We have security footage, voice recordings, digital theft logs, and wire fraud evidence. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. He clicked the recorder off and looked up at the large painting hanging on the wall, a family portrait from 2 years ago. Lana's smile in the photo now looked mocking. Nathan, still younger and more innocent, stood beside them with unknowing joy in his eyes. Simon stared at it for a moment, then walked over and turned the painting aside, revealing the hidden biometric safe behind it. Time to empty the last vault, he said, pressing his thumb to the scanner. As the safe hissed open, he heard Ruby's voice in his earpiece again. Simon, we've just confirmed something else. You're going to want to sit down. He froze. What is it? Ruby's voice dropped. There's another player. Someone else in the shadows. Lana and Steve aren't the only ones involved. Simon turned back toward the painting, his pulse thudding like a war drum in his ears. I knew it, he whispered. This goes deeper. Chapter 6. Broken Arm, Whole Truth. The mansion was quiet as the morning sun filtered through the high windows. Simon Carlyle stood in the doorway of his son's room, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the boy lying in bed. Nathan was propped up with pillows, his right arm wrapped in a thick white cast. He was staring at the ceiling, jaw tight, eyes distant. Simon stepped inside. You comfortable? He asked. Nathan nodded slightly. As comfortable as someone can be faking a broken arm, I guess. Simon allowed himself a tight smirk. That's the spirit. With a quiet creak, Simon pulled the desk chair up beside the bed. There was a pause, thick, heavy with the unspoken truth they both now shared. You sure you're ready for this? Simon asked, his voice lower now, deliberate. Nathan sat up a little straighter. They didn't just cheat on you, Dad. They attacked me. In your house. In your bed. You think I'm going to let that slide? Simon studied him. His boy, no, not a boy anymore. The bruises were fading, but the determination in Nathan's eyes had crystallized into something far more permanent. Simon had never wanted to drag his son into a world of lies, betrayal, and violence. But Nathan had already been dragged in. Frank had the orthopedic tech mold the cast just for show, Simon said. Latex padding, breakaway shell. You can get it off in under 4 seconds. Nathan gave a dry chuckle. Yeah, it itches like a real one, so he did a good job. Simon leaned back, his hands steepled under his chin. We've got surveillance footage. We've got evidence. But I want them caught red-handed. That's the only way they can't wriggle out with lawyers and excuses. Nathan nodded. So I'm bait. No, Simon said firmly. You're the final witness. You'll be there when it ends. But first, you need to be ready. Later that day, Private Gun Range. The gun range was deep in the hills outside the city, discreet, high security, and owned by one of Simon's old military contacts. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of gunpowder and oil. Targets lined the far wall, already peppered with bullet holes from the last training session. Simon stood behind Nathan as the boy held a Glock 19 in both hands, stance stiff but determined. A veteran firearms instructor named Ramirez hovered nearby, giving calm, concise feedback. Don't lock your elbows. Loosen your shoulders. Let the recoil happen. Nathan exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The report cracked through the room, echoing. Low left, Ramirez said. Try again. Nathan reset his grip. Fired again. Closer to center this time. Simon watched in silence, arms crossed, pride and dread warring inside him. After a few more rounds, Nathan stepped back and looked at his father. You think I'll have to actually use this? Simon didn't lie. I hope not. But if you do, you won't hesitate. Nathan met his father's eyes. Not after what they did. Ramirez nodded with approval. He's a fast learner. Keep him coming for another week, and he'll outshoot your security team. Nathan grinned faintly. I'm motivated. Evening. Estate garden. They sat outside that night, father and son, on the back patio overlooking the garden. The lights in the house were off in the rooms where Lana used to entertain guests, drink wine, and pretend their life was perfect. Now, that part of the house felt like a mausoleum. I used to think Mom was just distracted, Nathan said, sipping soda from a glass bottle. I figured you were always working, and she was just lonely. Simon didn't respond immediately. The pain in Nathan's voice cut deeper than the betrayal ever had. I blamed you for a long time, Nathan continued. But now I see it. She wasn't lonely. She was cruel. Simon turned to face his son, his voice low. There's something I've learned, son. Some people, when they have everything, they want to burn it just to feel the heat. Lana, she's one of them. Nathan leaned forward. And Steve. Simon's jaw clenched. Steve's a leech. Opportunist. He used her as much as she used him. But I think they were both playing each other, and neither expected us to play back. There was a silence between them, heavy with resolve. So what's next? Nathan asked. Simon exhaled. Next we wait. The bait's out there. Ruby's watching their every move. But when the moment comes, I need you ready. Not just with a gun. Mentally. Nathan looked at his cast and gave a small, grim smile. I've never been more ready in my life. Later that night, surveillance room. Simon stood in front of the large display wall in the secure surveillance room Ruby had converted from one of the estate's old wine cellars. Monitors showed live feeds, hallways, offices, Lana's old dressing room, and Steve's car parked outside his condo. Ruby leaned over her laptop. Nathan's access badge is still flagged restricted on the house system. If Lana or Steve check, it'll show he's not able to move far. Good camouflage. Good, Simon muttered. Ruby tilted her head. You really trust him to hold the line? Simon's voice was steady. I do. Ruby gave a small nod. Then we're almost ready. Simon stared at one particular screen, a grainy feed of the study where the fake acquisition files had been stored. They were coming. Soon. He just had to wait. Chapter 7. The Sting. The storm rolled in late, lightning streaking across the sky like cracks in glass. Wind lashed the trees surrounding the Carlisle estate as thunder rumbled above. It was the kind of night criminals might call perfect cover. Inside the vast mansion, however, everything was lit with purpose. In the control room beneath the East Wing, Ruby Winters sat hunched over a laptop, her eyes darting between multiple surveillance feeds. She spoke into a small earpiece, voice clipped but calm. They're moving. Simon Carlisle stood behind her, dressed in black, arms folded across his chest. His face was carved from stone, unreadable. Next to him, Nathan adjusted the weight of the Glock in his hand. His fingers trembled slightly, but his grip was firm. Ruby's eyes flicked to the screen, showing the east entry gate. A black SUV had just rolled past the private hedgerow and was slowing at the side driveway. Steve's driving. Lana's in the passenger seat, Ruby confirmed. Simon's voice was low. Do we have audio? Ruby nodded and tapped a key. The feed cracked with static. Then Steve's voice emerged, distorted but clear. Make this quick. He's in Denver until Monday, Lana. The hard drives are in the server room. We get the files, wipe the backups, and you can finally be free of him. Lana's voice followed, smooth and sharp. I'm free of him. This is just cleanup. After tonight, it's ours, everything. Nathan swallowed hard. The words cut deep. Simon placed a steady hand on his son's shoulder. Stay sharp. No hesitation. We finish this. Upstairs, server room corridor. The steel double doors to the encrypted server room sat at the end of a long corridor lined with abstract artwork and floor-to-ceiling windows. The floors gleamed, and the sensors along the ceiling had all been quietly disabled, just for tonight. Lana moved swiftly, a bag slung over one shoulder. Steve followed, holding a small black case containing a portable drive and hacking equipment. Both wore gloves. Lana punched in a code on the control panel beside the server room. Beep. Red light. Access denied. Damn it, Steve hissed. Did he change it? Try override 04, Delta 2, Lana snapped. It was still active last week. Steve typed it in. This time, the door clicked open with a soft hiss. They stepped into the cold, humming room. Rows of servers blinked silently, bathed in dim blue light. Lana moved to the central console while Steve crouched at the nearest junction, pulling cables and hooking up his device. All right, he muttered. Let's clone the drive and fry the access logs. We'll be done in 10. They didn't notice the subtle sound behind them. A soft creak, a faint shift of weight. Then, don't move. The voice was calm, steady Nathan's. Lana froze. Steve looked up, mouth open. Standing in the doorway, cast now gone, was Nathan. The Glock in his hands didn't waver. His eyes, hard and resolute, met his mother's. Lana gasped. Nathan? Baby, what are you? Shut up, Nathan said coldly. Steve began to rise slowly, but Simon's voice rang out next. One more inch, and I put you back in a hospital bed. From the shadows stepped Simon, flanked by two of his private security guards. Behind him, Ruby held a tablet in her hands, watching the live feed and recording every word. Simon's eyes locked on Alana. You break into my home. You steal my files. You assault my son. And now you want to play victim? Steve held up his hands. Look, man, you don't want to do this. Let's talk. Simon stepped forward, his rage simmering beneath an icy surface. Talk. You cripple my son in my own bedroom. You blackmail my wife. You siphon hundreds of thousands out of our accounts and try to bring down my company. He nodded to Ruby. Got it all recorded, she said. This feed's backed up in 3 locations. Lana's facade began to crack. Simon, wait, we were just trying to secure evidence. Steve told me you were going to disappear company assets. I thought you could play the loyal wife after stabbing me in the back. Simon spat. You didn't just cheat. You conspired. You lied. You assaulted my family. Lana's eyes darted between them. You can't prove I knew. Nathan took a step closer, gun still trained on them. You helped him drag me. You watch him hit me. And you locked the door after he did it. The silence that followed was absolute. Steve lunged. It was a foolish move, panic, desperate. In a flash, one of Simon's guards intercepted, pinning Steve to the cold tile floor, gun to his skull. The man groaned in pain as zip ties secured his wrists. Lana shrieked. Steve, you idiots. Simon stepped closer to her. You were never good at loyalty. Now you'll pay for your ambition. I did it for us. Lana shouted, her voice cracking. You were never home. You loved your empire more than your own wife. Steve was going to make us free, finally free of your control. Simon's eyes narrowed. You think this was about control? No, Lana. This was about greed. and you mistook my silence for weakness. Nathan lowered his weapon, breath steady now. Simon turned to his team. Call the police. Get the files. And make sure our guests are comfortable until they arrive. Ruby gave a tight nod and moved to her calms. As the guard dragged Steve out of the server room, Lana's eyes locked with Nathan's one last time. Nathan, please. I'm your mother. Nathan stared at her coldly. No, you're not. Simon placed a hand on Nathan's back as they watched her led away in cuffs. Their trap had worked. Now came the reckoning. Chapter 8. Truth and Blood. The fluorescent lights of the interrogation room buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on Lana's tear-streaked face. Her wrists chafed where the handcuffs bit into her skin, but her sobbing was more from fury than pain. Across the room, Steve sat slumped, bruised but defiantly sneering. Simon stood by the door, his expression unreadable, while Nathan lingered near the wall, silent and watchful. Lana's voice cracked as she pleaded, Simon, please, I didn't want it to go this far. You have to believe me. I never wanted to hurt you, or Nathan. Simon's cold gaze didn't waver. You're right, Lana. You never wanted to hurt me. You wanted to destroy everything I built. His voice was low, like ice sliding over steel. Steve's lips curled into a cruel smile. He's got the wrong idea. It's not just about you two. You're all pawns in a bigger game. We were ordered to bring quantum innovations down. Simon's eyes snapped to Steve. Whose orders? Who's behind this? Steve shrugged, his bravado flickering for the first time. Higher powers. People with pockets deeper than you can imagine. People who want your empire wiped off the map. Lana's sobs intensified, but her eyes were calculating. She glanced at Simon, desperation boiling beneath her tears. Simon, please, if you let me go, I can tell you everything. We're not the villains here. Nathan's jaw clenched. He stepped forward, voice steady but sharp. You hurt me. You lied to Dad. You put our family at risk. Why should we believe anything you say now? Lana looked away, voice trembling. Because the truth will set you free. If you want to survive this, really survive, you have to know the full story. Simon's eyes narrowed. The years of ruthlessness in business now turned inward as he weighed her words. Suddenly, Lana's gaze snapped back, and with a burst of desperation, she lunged toward Simon's holstered gun. Stop! Nathan shouted, lunging forward to grab her arm, but she was faster. Simon reacted instantly, drawing his own pistol with precise, deadly speed. The shot rang out, a sharp crack that echoed in the small room. Lana screamed, clutching her shoulder as blood soaked through her blouse. Nathan froze, eyes wide with shock. Mom! Simon's voice was calm, hard as steel. I warned you. Lana collapsed into a chair, her sobs now mingled with rage and pain. Steve's expression turned cold fury. You bastard! You shot her? In front of the kid? Simon stepped forward, standing tall. She was reaching for my gun. I gave her every chance. This ends now. Nathan's eyes locked on his father's. Was it necessary? Simon's gaze softened for a moment, flickering with something Nathan hadn't seen before, regret. It had to be. Lana spat blood, glaring fiercely. You think this is over? You don't know who you're messing with. Steve snarled, his bravado returning. We're just the surface. The real power? Untouchable. Invisible. You'll see. Simon's expression darkened. We'll see. The room fell into tense silence, broken only by Lana's ragged breathing and the distant hum of the building. Nathan swallowed hard, voice barely a whisper. Dad, what now? Simon looked down at his son, then back at Lana and Steve. Now we finish this. No more lies. No more betrayals. The truth will come out, and justice will be served. The betrayal had reached its blood-stained peak. Chapter 9. Justice Served. The sharp wail of sirens cut through the tense silence that had settled over the estate. Flashing blue and red lights illuminated the night as squad cars pulled up to the grand front entrance. Police officers swarmed the scene with swift precision, their footsteps crunching on the gravel driveway. Simon stood at the threshold of his home, Nathan at his side, watching as the law descended on Lana and Steve, still cuffed and visibly shaken from the earlier confrontation. Lana's face, smeared with blood and tears, twisted in a mixture of fear and defiance. Steve, bruised and battered, held his chin high, refusing to show weakness even as officers led him away. Simon Carlyle, you're under arrest for corporate espionage, conspiracy to commit fraud, and assault, a tall detective barked, producing a warrant. Lana's protests were sharp and desperate, but the officers were unmoved. Please, Lana begged, her voice cracking. You don't understand. It wasn't just us. There are others, people with power. You have to stop them. But her pleas fell on deaf ears as she was pushed into the back of a squad car. Nathan watched quietly, his gaze lingering on his mother's retreating figure. It's finally over, he said softly. Simon didn't answer immediately. His mind was already racing ahead, thinking of the battle still to come in court and the media frenzy waiting outside. The next morning, the national news exploded with the story. Headlines screamed betrayal, scandal, and the fall of Quantum Innovations' once unshakable leadership. Reporters clamored for interviews. Flashing cameras captured every detail, and social media buzzed with theories and speculation. Simon sat in his private office, the walls lined with awards and framed photos, now feeling like relics of a past life. He stared at the dossier Ruby Winters had just handed him, a thick stack of meticulously compiled evidence exposing not just Lana and Steve, but a shadowy network of corrupt executives and outside financiers who had conspired against him. Ruby stood by the window, arms crossed, her sharp eyes scanning the room. This dossier is airtight. Every paper trail, every recorded conversation, every illicit transaction. They won't be able to wiggle out of this. Simon nodded slowly, feeling the weight of years of betrayal and the burden of reclaiming his legacy. We have to prepare for trial. This will get ugly. Ruby gave a grim smile. Let them come. We're ready. The courtroom was packed on the day of the trial. Media tents surrounded the building, and protesters gathered outside, some holding signs demanding justice for Simon, others decrying Lana and Steve's actions. Inside, the atmosphere was tense and electric. Simon took the stand, his demeanor icy and controlled. His testimony was precise and unflinching as he laid out the timeline of betrayals, corporate sabotage, and personal pain. Lana's defense attorney tried to paint her as a victim manipulated by Steve and the shadowy conspirators, but Simon's evidence and Ruby's expert witnesses dismantled every argument. Steve, in turn, attempted to intimidate the court with threats and bluster, but the jury remained unmoved, eyes fixed on the facts and the unassailable trail of deceit. During breaks, Simon's lawyer leaned in. The prosecution's case is solid. The jury's responding well. You're going to clear your name. Simon allowed himself a rare, brief smile. Good. Quantum Innovations deserves that. Nathan sat in the gallery, watching his father with newfound respect and pride. The boy who once felt betrayed was now witnessing the man who had reclaimed their family's honor. After days of testimony, the verdict came swiftly. The courtroom was silent as the foreman stood to read the decision. We, the jury, find Lana Carlyle and Stephen Matthews guilty on all counts. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Lana's face drained of color, Steve's jaw clenched tight. Simon remained stoic, but inside, a storm of relief and vindication surged. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Simon. Cameras flashed as they shouted questions. Mr. Carlyle, how does it feel to have justice served? Simon took a breath, steady and commanding. Justice is not just about punishment. It's about truth, about rebuilding. Quantum Innovations will emerge stronger, and I will ensure that it never falls prey to betrayal again. Nathan stepped forward beside his father, a symbol of resilience and hope. The months that followed saw Quantum Innovation stabilize and grow. With Nathan increasingly involved in the company, Simon found renewed purpose in mentoring his son, preparing him to take the helm one day. The scars from the ordeal remained, emotional and physical, but the family had forged a new legacy, one born from betrayal, but cemented by unyielding strength and ruthless justice. Chapter 10. A New Legacy. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Quantum Innovation's sleek headquarters, casting long golden beams across the polished marble floors. The building buzzed with renewed energy, a tangible pulse of innovation and hope. In the executive office, Simon Carlyle stood by the window, his eyes scanning the city skyline, but his thoughts were anchored not on the view, but on the man now sitting across from him. Nathan Carlyle, no longer the frightened, broken boy who'd stumbled into the emergency room months ago, was now a confident young man. He wore a tailored suit that fit him like armor and carried himself with a quiet strength that caught even Simon off guard. "Morning, Dad," Nathan greeted, breaking the silence as he flipped open his laptop, preparing for the day's meetings. Simon nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Morning, Nathan. Ready to shake things up today?" Nathan's eyes twinkled with a hint of mischief. "You know it. I've been reviewing the latest market analysis. We're positioned well, but I think it's time to push harder on the AI division. The competition's already catching up." Simon leaned back in his chair, impressed. "You've got a good eye. That kind of insight, it's what Quantum needs." Nathan glanced up, meeting his father's gaze. "Thanks. I want to make sure we build something stronger, something that lasts. No more lies, no more betrayals." Simon's face softened. "I'm glad to hear that. You're a different man from the boy who was nearly broken by everything that happened." Nathan's jaw tightened, memories flickering in his eyes. "I've forgiven you, Dad, for being gone so long, for not protecting us better. But that chapter is closed. Now we're writing the next one, together." Simon stood and walked over to Nathan, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "I'm proud of you. More than you know. You've grown into a leader, and not just in the boardroom." Nathan smiled, a genuine warmth filling the room. "I learned from the best." The moment was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Ruby Winters stepped inside, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Simon, Nathan, sorry to interrupt. The board is waiting for you both in the conference room. They're eager to hear Nathan's presentation on the new AI strategy." Nathan rose smoothly. "Lead the way." As they left the office, Simon watched his son walk confidently down the hallway. The weight of past betrayals still lingered in his mind, but it was eclipsed by a fierce hope. Nathan wasn't just his son, he was the future. In the conference room, the board members, seasoned executives and investors, sat waiting. The air was thick with expectation. Nathan took center stage, his voice steady and clear as he outlined the bold new direction for Quantum Innovations. He spoke about harnessing emerging technologies, ethical AI development, and global expansion. Throughout the presentation, Simon noticed subtle glances exchanged between board members, respect mingled with cautious optimism. When Nathan finished, the room erupted in applause. Simon felt a swell of pride. This was no longer just his company. It was theirs. Later, as the day wound down, Simon and Nathan sat together in the executive lounge overlooking the city. Nathan broke the comfortable silence. "Dad, do you ever think about how different things could have been? If Lana hadn't betrayed us, if we hadn't lost so much?" Simon's eyes darkened with memory. "Every day, but dwelling on what-ifs won't change the past. What matters is what we do now." Nathan nodded. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes. For Quantum, for us." Simon's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. "That's all I could ask for." They clinked their coffee mugs in a quiet toast. That evening, Simon found himself alone in his study, flipping through old photographs, snapshots of happier times before the storm. There was Lana's radiant smile, Nathan's childhood, laughter frozen in time. But instead of bitterness, Simon felt something new, a resolve. The scars of betrayal were still there, but they were a reminder of the price of trust and the cost of complacency. He rose and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights flickering like stars. "Our legacy," he whispered to himself, "will be built on hard lessons, but on truth." Behind him, the door creaked open softly, and Nathan entered. "Dad," Nathan said quietly, "we'll face whatever comes next. Together." Simon turned, placing a steady hand on Nathan's shoulder. Together. Outside, the city thrummed with possibility. Inside, a father and son prepared to lead, stronger, wiser, and united. The The past had been dark, but the future was theirs to shape.